that it was not right. So who is your brother? Actually, this is the law that is set. وَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ. Because of the blessing of Allah, we are brothers and sisters. But according to what? The law of Allah, He made us brothers and sisters. But those that they are not of, even though if you're your son, your blood brother, you can call him brother. Some of our people that they are here, alhamdulillah, Allah bless them that they came to Islam anyway. And we're talking about some of these issues, alhamdulillah. And the blessing that it is with them is that, you see, we got our families in there. And I wish they would have been in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, فَلَا تَسْأَلْنَ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ. Don't ask me what you don't have any knowledge of. And then, إِنِّي أَعِدُكَ أَن تَكُونَ مِنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ. I am telling you that you don't be of those that before Jahiliyyah, before Islam, before the command of Allah that it comes to you. Anyway, with this briefing that I'm saying, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts the tone to all of us, that be with Allah, your brothers and sisters. Why? One law to all of us. Not to be in the path of Allah, then we are not really, no matter if it is your brother, your sister, then watch out. On the life of hereafter, يَوْمَ نَدْعُ كُلَّ أُنَاسٍ بِإِمَامِهِمْ. The day is going to come. I will be asked, who was your leader that you were following? Ya Allah, it was Quran. Allah forbid, if there is a brother or sister that some of us have, they won't be asked who is your leader or Quran. He says it was Bible. He says, go ahead, you will be judged with the Bible. You will be judged with the Torah. You will be judged with this and that. I will be judged with my Quran. Inshallah ta'ala. That is the way that this life is going to be connected to the life of the life. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. By time, surely man is at loss, except for those who believe and do good deeds and advise others to truth and patience. Today, brothers and sisters, I'm going to talk to you about something I'm sure all of you have heard about at least once in your time in this country. Now, tell me, who's heard of Muslim Standard Time? It's a seemingly acceptable tradition among Muslims in general, but some other people, that you can come later than the expected time. And let's say that there's a program. Someone says that it starts at 7. It's acceptable for most masjids for you to come at 7:30 to 8 o'clock, and they still consider themselves to be on time as opposed to not showing up at all. But what's ironic about this situation is that the day of a Muslim is built around a clock. You have to do your salah at specific times of day, so you would think that a Muslim would be considered more punctual than most people because you have to do certain religious duties throughout the day. But a lot of people don't do that. And people think that punctuality is optional. They think you don't have to show up on time. By just being there, they think it justifies them. But this is not the case. In the Quran, in Surah Isra, ayah 34, it says, fulfill all contracts you have, because on the day of judgment you will be asked about the contracts you have made. Now, you might think something as little as being on time is not that important. But any vow or promise that you make to a person is very important. Because when you say that you will arrive on time, this is considered a promise. And if you arrive late, you are breaking the promise, no matter how little you think it is. But it's not to say that all the time. Because I'm sure a lot of you have been parents, and when you have little kids, it's hectic trying to deal with them. So generally, it's okay for that, but it's not to say that's always justified. Because if you're being late simply for the sake that you don't feel like going, that's not exactly justification. Because the thing is, a lot of Muslims consider themselves to be more punctual than people here in the West. But the irony of the situation is it's actually the opposite. Punctuality here is described as a very important virtue in most businesses, because when you are punctual, you are considered to be a very dependable person, and therefore you can handle much more responsibility than a person who is not. So by being on time, you show people that you are dependable and trustworthy, and that you are a better person for a job than a person who is not, because you show that you are willing to do anything to get the job done. Now I'm going to give you some examples from the Quran, besides the one I just stated, how important a promise is, even as one as little as being on time. Surah Al-Imran, ayahs 76 and 77. Ye who fulfills his promises and guards against evil, then surely Allah loves those who guard against evil. And as for those who take a small price for the covenant of Allah and their own oaths, surely they shall have no portion in the hereafter, and Allah will not speak of them, nor will He look upon them on the day of resurrection, and nor will He purify them, and they shall have a painful chastisement. Similarly, we have another verse of the same connotation, Surah Anfal, ayah 55 and 56. Surely the vilest of animals in Allah's sight are those who would disbelieve than those who would not believe. Those with you who make an agreement, and then they break their agreement every time, and they do not guard against punishment. This ayah was critical of the Jews of the Bani Qurayza, who did not honor the pact which they had formed with the Holy Prophet regarding the cooperation with the Kafirs. They supplied their arms to the disbelievers of Mecca for the Battle of Badr, and thus invalidated the pact. Later, they justified their actions by saying that they had forgotten the pact. They once more entered a pact with the Holy Prophet, only to violate it, this time in the Battle of Khandaq. They went against the pact and sided with Abu Sufyan. So now you may be saying that that is more important than staying on time when you say that you will be. But in the Quran it says that every pact that you make is important regardless of how small it is. So in conclusion, this was to say that you should try to honor every pact that you have made, no matter how small you think it might be. So if you tell someone that you will be there at a specific time, you should be there at that time, if not earlier, just to ensure that that does not happen. Now, this is not just to say that this affects Muslims only, it is for all people. But in this ummah, we should try to better ourselves through this to show people that we can be better. Salawat.
Assalamu
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, can everybody who is, Rashid, how old are you? Rashid? 10? Alright, 15 and below, come sit up here in the front, please. All the kids.
Oh, me too?
Yeah, you too. If you look 15 or below, that's fine too. Come on, baby bums, faster, let's go. Beautiful, thank you. Okay, can we get one more? Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
So you guys are really close and personal, I like this. But so purpose of my brief discussion with you is to discuss the topic of friends, which will be the topic of the night after with our honorable speaker. So I'm just previewing the discussion with you. So I wanted this to be a talk, not just for the kids, but also for the adults, for us to also reflect upon how we ourselves can be better friends as well. Because the topic is often pointed towards others. As we search for friends, what are the qualities that define a good friend, and a good friend from an Islamic perspective? However, it is essential that we ourselves also introspect and realize that we need to improve upon ourselves to be better friends, and to be better friends by an Islamic definition. So I'm going to give you two parallel stories. I'm going to talk about two people in my lives, one who was my best friend, and one who was another roommate that I had. I'm going to talk to you about both of them, and we're going to have a discussion about who you thought was a better friend and why, and then I'm going to give you some ayahs from the Quran and some hadiths to have a brief discussion. If that's okay? Well, Okay. So,
If it wasn't, they're going to object.
if it wasn't, then what?
If it wasn't okay, they will go ahead and give objection.
I'm objecting that you're still sitting back there, but it's okay. So my very best friend that I ever had was a guy named Muhammad. Okay? So Muhammad actually passed away last year, but he was someone who was very, very special to me. And he was an amazing, amazing friend. So what made Muhammad such a special friend to me? So the first encounter that I had with Muhammad was I ran into him on the bus between the two campuses. All the seats were full, and a new group of people came on the bus to ride. And he noticed that there was many girls that were standing. First thing that he did was he got up, didn't say anything, walked away, and offered the seat to somebody else so that they could sit down. Then as we got off the bus, I was talking to him, and I realized that we shared a class together. And I was discussing, and we were just talking about what our plans were and things of the sort. And he reminded me that it was Jummah, and he was going to Jummah. And I was new to the university, and I actually wasn't even sure where Jummah was. So he introduced me to the Jummah on campus and, helped me to attend that. Muhammad is the kind of person that, so Bara is one of my good friends from school, and he knows Muhammad well as well, so maybe you could share some words. But Muhammad was someone who had such high degree of iman that he was always thinking of Allah. Not just thinking of Allah, but he was always acting towards Allah, always acting like a Muslim. He always reminded me that Islam is not something that you do 5 times a day or 30 days in a Ramadan. Islam is a lifestyle. Islam is total submission to Allah's will. It made me introspect and realize that I myself need to improve as a Muslim. Everything that he did, all of his actions reminded me of being a Muslim. The way that he carried himself. And whenever it was time to pray, no matter if we were in the library, no matter if we were in a friend's house, no matter the setting, he reminded everybody, even if there's non-Muslims there, that we must stop and we must pray. I've honestly never had a friend like that regardless of the environment and the circumstances that we're in, stops everyone and reminds them that it is time to pray and you must come to Salah. I remember one time we threw him a surprise birthday party and it was time for prayer and he remembered, even though he was shocked it was his birthday, and then 5 minutes later he's like, wait guys, it's time to pray. We were in the bowling alley, so we're like, where are we going to pray? He's like, we're going to the parking lot. So a big group of us, like 20 guys, are in this gravel parking lot doing sajda on like rocks. And I'm just like, Allahu Akbar, like trying to stay strong and positive. But he is doing sujood and he is holding it as though he's on a comfortable environment on a carpet. No matter the circumstances, he always reminded us to pray. Beyond that, every Friday we used to sit down together and he would bring people together and say, guys, let's read the Quran, let's have a discussion. And he'd bring people together and we would read the Quran. When he saw something that I was doing that he felt wasn't appropriate Islamically, what would he do? He would politely and very lovingly remind me of my flaws in secrecy when no one is around in a very non-judgmental way. This is key. When we see someone doing something wrong, we often make judgments and we feel as though we should act upon this perception immediately. In reality, you shall not expose others' sins. And the best way to do it is a way that you don't make the person feel bad. Because the reality is that we all have sins, we all have flaws, we all make mistakes. Is that true? Right. Okay, so that's Muhammad, my best friend. I'm going to briefly tell you about a roommate that I had who was also Muslim. I'm not going to say his name out of respect, of course, so we'll call him, what should we call him? Okay, I heard Abdullah, so let's do Abdullah. So this roommate of mine, he had a good heart, he had good intentions. However, his actions did not always follow his intentions. He was the kind of person that unfortunately got caught up with the wrong group of friends. And as we'll discuss, your friends define you. Your friends are a reflection of who you are. I realize when I go like this, I'm away from the mic, my apologies. But he would, on a Friday, Saturday night, often get caught up in the wrong group of friends who would go and consume alcohol. And with that peer pressure, he would follow them and go with that group. The actions that he partake in, I don't know and I don't want to know. But he told me that he wants to pray, and he really wants to pray, but he would forget to pray. Why would he forget to pray? Why would he get caught up in these wrong actions? It was simply because of the audience, the crowd that he kept. Look, we're all humans and we're all forgetful. Sometimes we can forget that it's time to pray. Sometimes we can forget about the importance of reading Quran. Which is why friends are so essential. Because we are all active in school and in our universities and environments, and you spend a great deal of time with your friends. Sometimes more so than you spend with your own family. So your friends can either serve as a reminder to move towards Jannah or move towards Jahannam. So briefly, I want you guys to just do a quick reflection with me. Between the two friends, what made Muhammad such a unique friend? What are some specific characteristics? Or I'll pick on random people.
Oh, you can pick on random people.
No,
I like that idea.
No.
Well, he always reminded you to pray. He always inclined you towards good. I'm going to leave the rest for the obviously.
He always, like, anywhere that you were, he would say, it's time to pray.
Yeah, absolutely.
We tried to bring you up.
He tried to bring you up, yeah, very good.
The way he corrected you.
Yeah. He said the way he corrected you. Very true.
Him being a good Muslim influenced you to also be a good Muslim.
Absolutely. She said him being a good Muslim influences you to be a good Muslim. Very true. I'm going to make eye contact and just stare at somebody. Look at her try to look away. Look at her try to look away. He thinks he can... What do you think?
Like, he reminded you, like, he wanted you to be a better person. So, like, he wanted to remind you to pray. And, like, no matter what the setting, he wanted you to pray so you would, like, do it.
Yeah.
Like he said on his birthday, you went in the parking lot and on the gravel, and it was like hard. And he politely told you to, if you were doing something, and he wouldn't like say, "Hey, stop." He would politely do it. So that's what I thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just one thing I wanted to add, so then the kids pay attention to this. He was non-judgmental. He didn't judge you. And that's one thing that we need to work on.
He said he was not judgmental. Very true. I'm going to discuss with you a few ayahs from the Quran and a few sayings of Rasulullah and a few hadiths recited by the Imams. And I want us to just reflect upon them briefly. There's this ayah of the Quran that I read recently that really stuck out to me on this topic. It's Surah 58, verse 22, Surah Al-Majid, excuse my Arabic. It says, in English, "You shall not find a people who believe in Allah and the latter day, befriending those who act in opposition to Allah and His Apostle, even though they were their own fathers, or their sons, or their brothers, or their kinsfolk." And the verse continues on, but I'll stop there. So I'm going to repeat it one more time because I know it's a little bit difficult to understand. "You shall not find a people who believe in Allah and the latter day," which is the day of judgment, "befriending." These people are not befriending those who act in opposition to Allah and His Apostle, even if those people were your own fathers, your sons, your brothers, and your kinsfolk. This kind of comes back to what Brother Gideon was talking about earlier, that just because somebody is a family member does not mean necessarily that they are your friend. Imagine that even if someone is your family member, that the brothers looking at each other, even if somebody is your family member does not mean that they are necessarily your friend. And there's this other surah, another ayat along the same lines. This is Surah 25, verses 27, 29, Surah Al-Furqan. It says, "Allah the Exalted says in the Quran," that's not part of the Surah. Okay, the Surah starts, "And remember the day when the wrongdoer will bite his hands and say, 'Woe to me, would that I had taken a path with the messenger. Woe to me if only I had not taken so and so as a friend. He has led me astray from this reminder,' the Quran, "after it had come to me. And Satan is ever a deserter to man in the hour of need." Imagine on the day of judgment, one of the greatest regrets that people will have is their friends, is the company that they kept. Because your friends, again, they define you and they influence your actions more than you realize. For example, being around friends that curse frequently. I've seen this repeatedly in college. Being in an environment where cursing is common, it becomes normalized. Over time, you start to become numb to it. And I think all of you can appreciate this being, if you're in public school, is that you'll see that people, misbehave, they curse, and it just becomes something that is regular. And sometimes you find that those that didn't curse before they had such friends will sometimes slip up and just say a word. Oh, it wasn't that bad. And then they might slip up and say a word even stronger than that, not even realizing that their actions are molding to be as the ones that their friends have. So, Imam Jafar Sadiq says, my best friend is the one who gives me my weaknesses and shortcomings. My best friend is the one who gives me my weaknesses and shortcomings. Meaning that the one who brings my shortcomings and weaknesses to my attention is my best friend. Because my father always says this, that everyone will criticize you behind your back, but only the truest of your friends will criticize you to your face. Remember this is very important. Everyone will criticize you to your back and speak poorly about you and backbite. But their truest friends will do it to your face. And they will do it in such a way that you don't feel bad about it. Now we've been talking as though we're searching for a friend. But it's important that we remember that this is true for ourselves as well. We must all strive so that we can be better friends as well. And how can we do that? We must remind others of rightfulness and of working towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we see a friend doing something incorrectly, we must not be harsh and judgmental towards them. We must be soft and in private remind them of their actions. Any other thoughts on I just have a few left. I wanted to see what the kids and the adults thought as well. What did you guys think of the hadith that I read in Quran ayats? I'll pick on adults. Do you guys want me to pick on the adults?
Yes.
Brother Mohsin.
It's not an easy thing to do, so you have to constantly remind yourself to be like that, because it is difficult to tell someone of their faults.
Yeah, he's saying it's not an easy thing to do. We must constantly remind ourselves. Absolutely. Anyone else? Are the girls still present, or are they mentally gone? Any comments? Any thoughts? Yeah, it was Surah Al-Furqan, which is Surah 25, is verses 27 to 29. Anyone else? Okay, that's fine. I have a couple more that I want to read. Imam Ali said, the felicity of this and the next world lie in two things. Firstly, keeping secrets, and secondly, friendship with the good. And the miseries of this and the next world are summed up in two things. Firstly, divulging secrets, and secondly, friendship with wicked persons. Felicity is like an intense happiness. So Imam Ali is summarizing the sources of intense happiness of this life and the hereafter in two things. Keeping secrets and friends. Imagine the importance of having good friends. So much so that Imam Ali is saying that some of the greatest sources of happiness will be derived from your friends. And lastly, I am going to end with a saying by Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. A person is likely to follow the faith of his friend, so look to whom you befriend. I think this is what I want to leave with you, is look to who you become friends with. Oh, actually, no, there's one more I have to read, please, sorry. We have to look to who we friend, and we have to strive to be better friends ourselves. However, we all know that nobody is perfect, right? We all, each ourselves, have flaws, and our friends will also have flaws. So it's not that if you can't find your friend that is perfect, that you abandon this person. No. You work with them if they are guided towards the right direction and they have an intent to move towards the right direction. And in fact, along the same lines, Imam Ali said, when you cherish someone, you should cherish him moderately, for he may be your enemy someday. And when you hate someone, you should hate him moderately, for he may be your friend someday. If you intend to cut yourself off from a friend, leave some scope for him from your side, by which he may resume friendship, if it so occurs to him someday. So even if you cut yourself off from someone, thinking that this person is not a friend, and is not bringing you towards the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you should still leave some room in case that person changes their mind and returns to you. And vice versa, if you love somebody, you must remember that humans are flawed and we change, and you should leave room to be disconnected with this person. All in moderation, which is key. So with that, simply want to remind us all that we must strive to be the best friends that we can be, and we must strive to find the best friends that we can find. And remember, sometimes you will feel lonely because you won't be able to have many friends that meet this criteria. It's not easy. I've been there, I completely understand. There was times that I felt like I really didn't have that many friends. But the thing that's important is quality over quantity, especially when it comes to friends. It's better to have one good friend than 10 or even 100 quote-unquote friends who are not there for you in the time of need and who don't bring you closer towards the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And with that, I will turn it over to our speaker. Jazakallah khair.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
Tradition, Brother Basil Carter, you have done a great job. Let me tell you, Muhammad, your friend, is not dead as you're talking about. Why? Last year that he passed away, you came to this masjid, and how many times in various salats they read Fatiha for him? How many times you have talked about him good? Your words of good for him, that means he's a living creature. So you were blessed with him, and let it be a lesson for all of us, that if you have a moment friend, and you are guiding him to the path of paradise, that means that path is continuous, and it is never, it's endless. And every time that you think of him, then there is a blessing for him that he guides you and he gave you all the good things. Jazakumullah khair.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Tonight, I'll try to say a few words about Nabi Nuh alayhi salam. And I think Brother Bahram has set the tone for what I may say about him and add a little to that. But before we get started, let me recite a few verses from Surah Nuh, which is Surah 71 in the Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أرسلنا نوحا إلى قومه أن أنذر قومك من قبل أن يأتيهم عذاب أليم قال يا قوم إني لكم نذير مبين أن يعبدوا الله واتقوه وأطيعون يغفر لكم من ذنوبكم ويؤخركم إلى أجل مسمى إن أجل الله إذا جاء لا يؤخر translate in English. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, surely we sent Nuh alayhi salam to his people, warning them that a painful punishment is heading their way. He said to his people, O my people, Ya qawmi, I am just a plain warning to you. And the warning, Nadir, it's always coming when there's some doom pending. Something's about to happen, a consequence, a distasteful consequence. He said to them, obey Allah, worship Allah, obey Him, be mindful of Him, have the taqwa, and obey me. Nuh alayhi salam told them to obey him because he would lead them to what Allah wants. He's not telling them to obey him because he has something outside of what Allah wants. And then he says that Allah, He will forgive you. He will forgive you your sins. And He will delay any respite towards you until an appointed time. And then when the term of Allah comes, when that time comes, it cannot be delayed. No one can stop it if you only but knew. The Nuh alayhi salam, he said, Ya Allah, Ya Rabbi, قال ربي إني دعوت قومي ليلا ونهارا. He said, I have been calling my people by night and by day. But my calling, my invitation to them is only causing them to become more arrogant. And the surah goes on. I stopped there at ayat number 6. There are 28 ayats in Surah Nuh. What I attempted to do, first I should tell you that at school, at Muslim Community School where I work, I've been trying to share with students there in the absence of the alim, the real alim is Sheikh Abdul, who's away. So I'm trying to share some information with the students there that might be useful. And there's nothing like Quran, obviously. So this is one of the personalities from Quran that we thought we would learn together. Nuh alayhi salam first is included among the 5, what we call the 5 greatest Anbiya. You have Nuh, wa Ibrahim, wa Musa, wa Isa, wa Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And Nuh alayhi salam in the Quran is mentioned by name 43 times. And he's mentioned in 29 surahs. And you know that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides to mention a prophet with this type of frequency, this is an indication that it's something related to his life that we should know. Because in the Quran, in Surah Al Imran, ayat 81, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, paraphrasing, when He offered the trust, the covenant to the Anbiya, He asked them, would you support one another? Meaning the prophets of Allah are like one family. They reinforce one another. They don't conflict with each other. They don't battle with each other. They just continuously reinforce. So what Nuh alayhi salam is teaching and saying obviously has been reinforced by the prophets who have come after him. And there's some interesting information about Nuh alayhi salam that's not mentioned in the Quran. I don't know how accurate it is, but you know, when you study and you study as a person who's trying to get additional information, it's always appealing to have that information, which I'll share some of that with you this evening. But there are a few things that stood out in the 43 times his name is mentioned in the 29 surahs, some of them which I looked at, which apply to us today. Number one, you see in studying his life along with other prophets, you see the term al-mala. Al-mala are those chieftains. They use the word chieftains in English, but I believe the correct definition of al-mala would be those people yielding influence in society and power, and they tend to deviate the people away from Allah by exerting their power. And for a person who pays close attention to language, since today we are always hit with these polls. They tell us a poll result says that people favor this or favor that. Then the language of al-mala in the Quran, when you see it, they use terms like we. That we people see you in a certain way. So they would tell a prophet, for example, they would say, we see you as majnoon. Or we see you as, meaning crazy, meaning something's wrong with your mind. You're not conforming. Or they would say, we see you as a sahir. You're doing some tricks and magic in the society. You're trying to confuse the people. Or they would call the person a kadhib, that you're telling too many lies. And then they say, oh, Prophet, you are bashar. You're just a human like us. There's nothing so special about you. So, and if you really were so special, and this Allah that you're talking about really wants to guide us, why did He send an angel? Why didn't He send some creature to us that would have this overwhelming appeal? So this is one of the tactics that you find in the story of Nabi Nuh and others, that al-mala, this class of people who think they have ultimate power and influence, they yield that power and target those people who are calling them to Allah. So we should be mindful of those people. Now in today's terms, or today's society, al-mala, you should ask, who are they? Where are these people? This is a question that maybe, I don't know if we have a question and answer session. Brother Naheem probably can answer this much better than me. But they are around and they yield influence. Very often the people that we see who we think are making the decisions are not those people. They're somewhere in the shadows, but they have tremendous influence. Another thing that you find and study, and I call these tactical strategies. We should be aware that tactical strategies, like all of us are media, hopefully media savvy. We know what's going on in the media. So when you hear certain things being said, you have to ask yourself, is this coming from that category or class of people who are yielding their influence to control the minds and the behaviors of other people? Another characteristic that these people, these opponents of Nuh alayhi salam, they use the term in the Quran. Quran is called al-ardalun, al-ardalun, and the ardalun, huh?
Low class people.
That's right, the low class. They try to call the people low class, and in fact, these al-mala, these so-called influential people, when they were talking to Nuh alayhi salam, they basically told him, why should we follow you when you follow this ardalun? These are the people who are following you, low class. They are defeated people, downtrodden, worthless people. And you hear this, I guess this has been a kind of a prophetic narrative from the beginning of time, that people who want to reject the message, they always look at the people who are following the prophets, and then they evaluate them based on their own materialistic standards. And then they try to disqualify the prophet by saying, you see, your followers are these poor people, downtrodden people, marginalized. They don't have anything. So we should be mindful of that. And in fact, I may have mentioned that here before. Once when I used to vend, I used to have a vending table, and I used to vend in Georgetown, right at the Foggy Bottom Metro. And there was a man, he used to come up the escalator, and he would see me standing there. I would be selling incense and other things, and I tried to have the area fragrant, burning incense. So he would come to me and he said, are you Muslim? I said, yes. Are you Muslim? I'd say to him, yes. He said, yes. He said, how did you become Muslim? I said, well, Allah guides to Islam whomever He wishes. I can tell you the environmental factors in my life, the family factors, what was going on. But, you know, we give all the credit to Allah. When Allah decides to guide somebody, that's it. That's the end of the story. That's it. But I'll tell you my story. So I told him that when I was growing up in Washington, D.C., every day I would come out, pretty much somebody had been killed, somebody had been robbed, somebody had gone to court, had been sentenced to prison time. And this was my close friends, going back to the friend story, my pre-Islamic friends. And so Allah kind of awakened me to the fact that if you don't do something, you're going to be next. You're going to be dead, or you're going to jail, or you're going to be shot, you're going to be wounded. Something bad was going to happen. Because every day, when I was growing up in Washington, D.C. in the 1960s, this was the reality. So this man, when I told him, you know, I hadn't studied Islam, he said, oh, you didn't study Islam before you accepted? I said, no, I didn't study it. An elderly gentleman came to me from New York. He was around some friends of mine. He saw me sitting. He said, brother, would you like to pray? I said, I don't know what prayer is. Like this, he said, just follow them in the bathroom. When you put water on you, you put water on you. When they come out, you follow them. When we start the prayer, you bend with them. I did everything he said. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew it was better than getting shot. I knew it was better than going to prison. I knew it was better than being a drug addict. And I didn't have anything to lose by praying. This was my psychology. And then later on, a few days afterwards, he asked me would I like to become Muslim. I said, yeah, I sure would. I didn't have a PhD in Islam. I didn't have anything. I didn't have a 2-year degree, associate degree. I didn't know much, but I knew that anything that would take me away from what I was familiar with was better. But this guy, he looked down on me. He looked down at me. I could tell him in his demeanor and in his language. And he would come back frequently and he'd try to pick a little conversation with me to convince me that his knowledge and his standing was superior because he was well dressed. He was in the Georgetown crowd. He may have been a professor at a university or a doctor. I don't know what he was. But this is the type of attitude that you find this category of people when they consider someone, as Allah calls them, al-ardalun, this marginalized, low-class people. So we should be aware of that. Y'all should be aware, particularly the younger generation here, you should prepare yourselves to be labeled. Because when you're labeled either as crazy, or that you're doing weird things, or that you're strange, then you know you're doing what Allah likes. If you try to do everything that they like, I'm talking about the non-Muslims, and you get a lot of pats on the back, and they tell you you're doing a great job, you know they're trying to corrupt you. So prepare yourselves to be described a little differently. As the brother was saying about his friend who told him it's time to pray, I'm sure if the other people would have seen them go to the parking lot and pray, they would have said this is kind of strange. But it's not. It's strange to him, but it's not strange to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what Allah wants. So please keep this in mind. Another thing that about this Ardalun that I saw in the ayats was when the Al-Mala, this influential class, accused Nuh of his followers being a low class. Nuh alayhi salam told them, it's not my business to check their background. See, they were saying, like, these people who've come to you, you don't even know their background. And Nuh alayhi salam, I wish I were more fluent in Arabic and Quranic language, I would tell you exactly what the ayah says. But he told them, it's not my job to do a background check on them, basically. So I'm not, basically, if we use today's language, he would say, I'm not Homeland Security. To go back and pull out their former life. And he said particularly because they're mu'mineen now. They've accepted Islam, they're mu'mineen, so we're going forward. I'm not going back in their background to see who was a drunk, who robbed somebody, who killed somebody. It's not the general way that Nuh alayhi salam, Anbiya, Imma, and for us, that's not the way we should conduct our business as a general rule. Another thing, characteristic that I saw in the life of Nabi Nuh alayhi salam was that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described his opponents as constantly not only his opponents but others, he used the term فَكَذَّبُوهُ, فَكَذَّبُوهُ, فَكَذَّبُوهُ. They keep rejecting. They reject what's being presented to them. They don't want it. They don't want to change their lifestyle. So there are some behaviors that come out very loud and clear when you study the life of Nabi Nuh alayhi salam. One thing that I saw that was interesting is not in the Quran. Maybe it's accurate. It seems like it could be to me. And that was somebody, one of these persons, I don't know who it is, who's studying the life of Noah. They said, how come if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused all of those people to die because they were so bad, how could he cause the little kids to die? Why, when everyone was drowned, isn't it really unfair if a little baby drowned too, was killed? Well, some historians said for 40 years before the deluge, the flood, Allah did not allow any woman at that time to have a child. Which means, if that's correct, mathematically, the youngest one to die was 40. So it wasn't like an innocent child died. No, the youngest one was 40 if that information was accurate. Another thing that is very interesting about Nabi Nuh alayhi salam, and this is kind of, the main subject of Nabi Nuh alayhi salam is a man, a humble man, a carpenter. He was actually a carpenter, was his trade. A humble man who loved his people so much, who tried to reach them, laylan wa nahara, night and day. He never gave up. The Quran says 950 years. He called them. Some historians said it was 800 before he started to call them. So some historians say Nuh alayhi salam lived to be 2,450 years. And they say he was born, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said he was born 10 centuries after Adam. And he was born sometime between Adam and Nabi Idris in that time frame. And that the people after Adam, they were mu'mineen for a long period of time. And then they started to get corrupt. They became more corrupt, which was the need for Nuh alayhi salam to try to call them back to Islam. But they had deviated. Now, in this surah, Nuh, that I just read, these rejectors of faith, one of the things they said in Surah, in Ayah 23, they said, وَقَالُوا, they said, لَا تَذَرُنَّ آلِهَتَكُمْ وَلَا تَذَرُنَّ وَدَّ وَلَا سُوَاعَ وَلَا يَغُوث وَيَعُوقَ وَنَصْرَ. The people at that time told Nuh, they said, we are not going to give up worshiping the 5 names that I mentioned. What was Suwa, Yaguth, Ya'uq, and Nasra? These were actual people who lived before Nuh. And these people, they say, the history say they were people of great character. Very good people. And when they died, the people dedicated a monument to them, to remember them, to say these are good people. But it said the shaitan came to those people, the later generations, and said, oh, you love them so much, why don't you worship them? And they started to worship them, and they even placed, some of the history says, they placed idols of them inside their homes. They made it so pervasive, not only like just in the public square, but they put it everywhere. So these personalities were people of status that they had loved and admired, and here, as time passed, they began to worship them. And we see that's a pattern too, that sometimes people, they get too close to the ones that are dear to them, and very often that endearment can turn to some sort of worship and go too far. So that's something that comes out in the surah as well. So I think I'll stop there. There's much more that can be said. Brother Bahram mentioned about the conversation between Nuh alayhi salam and his son. And that was, as he explained, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him he's not from your ahl, from your family. He said, Innahu amalun ghayru salih. He's an evil deed. In other words, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala later told us, which is a point I had in mind. When Nuh later talked to Allah about his son, Allah told him, I know what you don't know. And immediately Nuh apologized in apologetic tone. He told Allah, basically, I don't want to try to know what I don't have access to knowing. Which means there was something in that boy that is not precisely told in the Quran other than he was amalun ghayru salih. There was no righteousness in him, but how it manifested, Allah knows deep down who that character was. And that's a lesson for us, because when somebody starts to reject guidance, whether they're in our family or someone else, we can try and we may detect or see a few things, but we may not really know what actually is going on deep down inside. And then we just have to accept that. And of course, everyone knows the story of Noah's son, when that big wave, that that big wave came, it separated Noah from his son. And when that wave came between them, that was the end of the story for this boy, or as the Quran called him, an amalun ghayru salih. He's an action that has no righteousness in him or with him. So with that, I invite all of us to study the Anbiya Allah in the Quran. It would be nice if there were study circles that would take the varying prophets. Of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only mentions 25 of them by name in the Quran. Out of the 124,000 that we hear about in some hadith, 25 are only mentioned by name. So that tells you the magnitude and the lessons in the Quran. Actually, I was thinking about it in driving here. The Quran is the total curriculum. Some people say, oh, the Quran is not a curricula. It is. It has everything in it. Even it has debate strategy. Because when you look at the dialogue between Nuh alayhi salam and his people, or Allah to Nuh, and Nuh back to Allah, it's always in dialogue format. It's always precise. Allah says something, Nuh responds exactly to what was said. Kuffar say something, Nuh goes right back to them exactly with what they said. So the dialogue, the elements, the foundation of dialogue is precise in the Quran, along with all of the other disciplines that the Quran for sure has. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna al-hada al-Quran yahdi lillati hiya aqwam. This Quran is guides to all that is superior and enduring and with greater value. Shukran jazilan. Jazakallahu khairan. Assalamu
With this beautiful explanation, as the end, of course, and the Surah ayah number 49 of that one that it talks about finally Nuh alayhi salam, it says that Nuh alayhi salam, 950 years, of course, what he did. You be patient. Don't say I want it yesterday. Inna al-aqibatu lil-muttaqin. Finally, the final analysis is for those that they have taqwa, which means what? That is your friend. In fact, Muhammad, when we talk about him, taqwa, which is the four categories that inshallah ta'ala we always will remember. What is taqwa? That you be in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Khawfan min al-jannah. What's the second one? Al-analu bil-tanzeel. The third one, wal-raza bil-khalil. And the fourth one, والاستعداد ليوم الرحيم. Huh? Isn't that beautiful? The first one, no matter what I do, Allah is watching me. Ya Allah, don't make me to be anything that you don't want me to be. عاقبة للمتقين, this people. Second one, how do I know that you're actually doing an act continuously with Quran? Quran is your constitution. You know, in Laylatul Qadr, Quran is my constitution. Look, Ya Allah, Ya, right? It becomes on Laylatul Qadr your constitution. Al-amal bil-tanzil. Al-rida bil-khalil. Don't say, why don't I have? Alhamdulillah, what I have. And then finally, wal-istidar liyawm al-rahim. Be ready. My suitcase is packed. Ya Allah, you call me, I'm going to come to you. And if we are in that categories, we don't all know whether something, I don't have to go ahead and apologize. It's a little bit too late. No, I'm always right on that, inshallah. So with that, may Allah, inshallah, protect and be pleased with my dearest brother Salahuddeen. I mean that, you know, frankly, sometimes when we say you're talking about the time of the you're selling the perfumes and ether and this, you know, the cold weather, they say that if 20 years you're a friend with somebody, you're no longer a friend. You're related to me. It's more than 40 years. So I'm double related to you. So with that, inshallah, we go to the question and answer, inshallah.